think, yeah. I don't know is the short answer. There's this theme of essentialism, for me, is quite useful to think about. When are we assuming that things have like definable essences which are discoverable and that drive all their outer manifestations, and when are we making that assumption beyond the reality of it? And the thing about sex is that in our culture that is something, or at least until recently, has been like, everyone knew what you meant when you said man and woman, and everyone knew what you meant when you said a male brain, but actually those things are discursive creations.
I almost wonder if you sort of started with something like type 1 brain, type 2 brain, type 3 brain, or type 1 hippocampus, would you get more interesting results than starting from the perspective that this part of a brain has to match that part of the brain? Are you constraining yourself just by the way you're talking about it?
Yeah,
Not you particularly.
I can't imagine. I don't know.
Actually, that right? Yeah. So I was going to ask you actually. So you talked about there being such a thing as like a male amygdala, and like you can actually identify differences.
Statistically, men's amygdalas will be larger or smaller.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. It's kind of like, so what is the difference? And so so that you end up with a classification scheme, and instead of doing the taxonomy of male and female, you just call it. You run your classifying algorithm and identify the statistical differences, and then say you've got this cluster. Yeah, there are 3 different kinds of amygdala. There's this one, and this one. And then you start going and looking and find, well, this one tends to be in males, but not all. And then you do the distribution kind of thing, like.
Or you could even take the sex out of it and say this one tends to appear in people who are good at maths, people who are good at chess,
or whatever you
want to research, and just completely remove
because apparently the sufficient statistical differences of the classifying algorithm will in fact group them happily. So there's clearly something interesting going on there. There's some structure going on.
Oh, and if you tell it that you train it saying there are male and female brains, it can then learn to identify the gender from the brain. But it isn't. That's not the same. From what I understand, statistically, as saying here are a bunch of brains, separate them, because it might then separate them into introverts and extroverts, or Blades and Wednesday fans, or
so they didn't just run a classifier.
I don't think that's been done, but I think we're now entering an era where that will. Because what is true is that the difference just in like volume, even correcting for body size, is huge. It is about 1.5, 1.4. There is a large difference between male and female brains, and one argument is that the differences you then see in brain structure are because women have to do the same functions, the walking, the talking, etc. But in less space. So they have to reorganize. They have to reorganize the packing, basically. So one argument is that differences in brain structure, far from. So one interpretation you often see. It's on my last slide. There was this paper that was reported in the Daily Mail. It was just brain structure, and the Daily Mail said, "Oh, this means why men are more logical." It was you can't go from looking at connectivity to saying logic. And the headline said, well, women can't read maps, and it's like they didn't. The way to tell if women could read maps is to get a load of women and ask them to read a map, and not to look at their brains.
No, because that doesn't mean that they have learned how to read the maps.
Oh no, I'm just saying if you just want to.
So if you just give people a task and they can't do it, that doesn't mean that they
couldn't
innately.
No, I wouldn't. I'm just saying, but even the observed difference, you can't tell. Even the observed difference in behaviour, you can't tell from brain structure. Yeah. So the interpretation of differences in brain structure is often that it subserves differences in performance for whatever those reasons. Like that's taken to be the causal root. But actually, there's some interesting papers saying these differences in brain structure may all support similarities in performance. But yes, I totally take a point which is if you see an observed difference, you still don't know how the observed difference got there. Yeah. It might be due to brain differences. It might be due to something. I think we should go to the pub.
Very quick question. It was a really interesting talk, and I'm interested in it from a teaching point of view. Just two quick questions. Did you say you're halfway through
we stopped the group sessions. I'm having one-to-one meetings with them to talk about their assignment.
That's what I was
going
to
ask. And then the deadlines.
What the assignment is.
Deadlines. The assignment is to pick one argument or chapter from Fine's book and review and critique it. That's not the exact wording. And what I did was I had a session in the middle of the seminar class where we all got together and I said what the assignment was going to be. So they knew what the assignment would be from the beginning. And I had a session where I sat down with them and I said, what is an excellent piece of academic writing? What characteristics does it have? And we talked through what excellent work would be for my class. And then I created a Google document which we could all edit, and we wrote up the marking criteria for the assignment. Because I wanted us to, I think I know what a good essay we write, but I wanted to check that they knew and to have some investment in defining it. Yeah, and that worked really well, and they said they liked it. Well, it worked really well. I haven't marked them yet. They said they liked it, and I felt like they asked some really good questions, which I clarified, and so it helped. That was good.
Yeah. And when people are coming, they've got to present the chapter and what they distill as the essential arguments.
Yeah, I asked them to do that. Yeah, and I did quite a lot of kind of, what would you call it, like Socratic teaching. So rather than having to try and prove what I thought the right interpretation was of the book during the seminar, I had a set of questions where when people would say things, I would probably everything I said in the class could boil down to either me saying, could you be more explicit about what you're saying? What would that mean if it was true? And is there any evidence that that's not true? Or what's the evidence? What evidence would you need to disprove that? And probably to about 30% of the questions I said that. But usually I ask people led sessions on my chapter, and I started them by saying, in a sentence, what's the key argument here?
And generally most people come well prepared, or do you have some little trick for ensuring that?
I got the first person to do it, so this is social proof, social psychology. We follow the lead of other people, so I primed the first people to do it. I knew they'd do it really well, so I got them to volunteer. So everyone else was like, oh, that's what we do in Tom's class. And they followed the lead. And mostly they did.
Great.
Yeah.
Last one, please. You
Last question.
But
I'm still going to be here.
If
you have any questions, I'm not going anywhere, but you guys have got things to do, so go.
Just a quick one. You mentioned that a couple of the class were feminists, and what was the rest of the group's reaction to those arguments about gender not necessarily being, as some people believe, an innate quality, but being a structural issue that's a societally constructed tool of oppression, if you like.
That specific point was made. And what was good was, because we met twice a week and we got to go over a lot of this stuff, it's actually very hard to make that point explicitly for people who don't already understand you. And this is the whole thing about teaching or political disagreement. Like, I say something and Andrew goes, oh yeah, right, because we know what we mean. And but actually trying to say that to someone who doesn't already agree with you is hard. And it was really nice to see people, people with different points of view getting better at articulating them and kind of working out how to effectively say that. And I think that's what we're in a university to do.
Was it quite well received by other members of the group? Were they open to it, or?
Yeah.
That's good.
But it's a university. It's full of liberals. So it'd be nice to have a bit more. It's meant to be a place of argument and disagreement, but actually there's a risk we often end up agreeing all the time, sometimes for the wrong reasons. And on that note, thank you.
All right, anyone wants to come for a beer? More than welcome. Because there will be somewhere. I guess if anybody wants to do that, I guess we'll hang out here for a little bit. If people do want to go away and put stuff away and then come back. And then maybe we'll aim to get away from here in about maybe 10 or 15 minutes, maybe?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for your questions.
Good. Dangerous work for you.
Yeah. Well, especially this getting into the Daily Mail and
I'm so careful. Very good.